Hello, this is Jerry Morton. Welcome to my podcast series titled Finding My Way, a memoir by Jerry Morton. This is podcast 73, titled A Lot Going On. Podcast 73, A Lot Going On, is an account from the 1970-71 school year. I was in my second year of working as a school psychologist for the St. Petersburg, Florida's inner city schools, as they were in the second year of the systems integration plan. I was very busy testing children, assisting teachers improve their classroom management skills, implementing new strategies such as developmental play activities for teachers working with behavioral problem children, and socially isolated children. I needed to address some personal issues as well. Podcast 73, A Lot Going On. That last year, 1970-1971, was a busy one. There were so many tasks to perform and much more to learn. Despite the successes of the implementation of the positive behavior management strategies based upon the RAID system, there were children whose emotional difficulties were so involved that more needed to be done to assist them in the social context of the classroom structure. I was searching for more answers. Two people allowed me to find additional strategies to address specific issues some of my school children were having. They were Dr. Vi Brody and Mr. George Good. Dr. Brody had graciously agreed to coach me in her developmental play process. At the end of the school day, I would go to her clinic and study her approach. She was focused on establishing rapport with the children to whom she provided therapy through establishing a mutual trust with the child. This was accomplished through natural physical contact, touch, with the child while they both played with objects as they sat on the floor. She had acquired considerable skill in reading the nonverbal messages sent out by the child and in sending valuing nonverbal message back to the little one through natural touch, physical contact. Dr. Brody would have sessions with a particular child that lasted months. I did not think that the school systems would be willing to pay for long stretches of such therapy. With Dr. Brody's permission, I decided to try compressing her intervention strategies into 4 one-hour sessions. There would be 1 session per week for 4 weeks. I would have a teacher from an early elementary grade work with me in the sessions with 4 to 6 of her most serious behavioral problem children. After getting permission from all required parties, I began implementing Dr. Brody's interventions. The teacher and I would meet with the children in an empty room. I would serve as a role model and coach to the teacher during the session. Naturally, we would meet before each session and discuss the play activities and strategies we intended to engage in with the children. After each session, we would meet and discuss what we thought had happened during the session and plan for the next one. Between sessions, I would consult with Dr. Brody for her guidance in improving our interaction with the little ones. The sessions produced remarkable results. The participating teachers reported massive improvements in the targeted children within the classroom setting that lasted long after the 4 sessions had been completed. My pre- and post-observations of the targeted children supported the teacher's report, but not as dramatically as they stated. The important issue was that the teacher and the targeted students were more successful in their interactions in the classroom setting. For those who would like to know more about Dr. Brody's developmental play approach, I would recommend that you read her book, The Dialogue of Touch, Developmental Play Therapy. The book was published in 1993. The Library of Congress's catalog number for the book is 93-90788. In her book, Dr. Brody wrote that copies of it could be obtained by writing Developmental Play Training Associates, 519 Plaza Seville, that's spelled Seville, 519 Plaza Seville Court, Treasure Island, Florida, zip 33706. I don't know if this address is still active. My doctoral dissertation was an evaluation of the effectiveness of the 4 one-hour weekly sessions with first-grade children and their teachers. The research found that there were statistically significant changes in the reduction of negative behaviors displayed by the targeted children. I had expected to see statistically significant increases in positive behaviors as well, but that was not the case. There were improvements in the positive behaviors, but they did not meet the standards required to call them statistically significant. The teachers involved in the project strongly disagreed with the lack of statistically significant improvements in the children's positive behaviors. I think this discrepancy has an explanation. When I would ask a teacher to describe one of her behavior problem children before the developmental play sessions began, she would use descriptions such as, "He's mean. He doesn't care about anyone but himself. He's vindictive. He's always seeking revenge. He steals. He's angry at everyone," etc. After 2 4-hour developmental play sessions, the teacher would describe the same child as frightened, disoriented, not knowing what to do, wanting to be liked but not knowing how to do that, sad and alone, etc. It was the teacher's interpretation of the meaning of the child's disruptive behavior that had changed. The interpretation of the child's behavior as being mean and vindictive is an indication of how the interpreter is going to respond to the child. In turn, interpreting those same behaviors as meaning that the child is frightened and disoriented will produce a totally different set of responses to those same behaviors. If you would like to know more about the dissertation and its research, you can access it by contacting the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, Tennessee, or Googling the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and following their prompts to get to dissertation, Jerome H. Morton, 1973. Contact interaction, the implementation and evaluation of an intervention technique for elementary teachers. Another problem that my teachers and I were struggling to address was the social isolation in the classroom. This was often a child who had recently moved to the area or who came to the school in the middle of the school year. He was usually the last one to be selected by the team captain to be on a sports team during recess. Few, if any, children spontaneously spoke to him during the school day. He ate lunch in isolation. The social isolate was typically a quiet, sad figure throughout the school day. One afternoon, I commented about the school isolates to one of my school social workers, George Good. It was right after I had responded to his request to explain the positive reinforcement classroom management strategies many of my teachers were implementing. George suggested that we brainstorm on finding ways to help the isolated child become a part of the classroom group. I liked what we developed as a strategy to assist these children and intended to see if I could get a teacher with such a child to allow me to try it. It wasn't hard to find that teacher. So many of the teachers I worked with in those 7 schools were highly dedicated and caring people who wanted to help their children. They inspired me to do even more than I thought I could do. It wasn't long before I had the opportunity to implement the newly conceptualized strategy. Mrs. Brown's 5th grade class had a child who started attending her class about 3 weeks ago, just after the first spring grading period had started. She reported that the child appeared to be very shy. He just didn't reach out to his classmates. He just sat quietly in his seat and did his work. The boy wore a sad expression on his face most of the day. He was always picked last for group games during morning and afternoon recess. Recently, he started to not even stand with the group of kids being selected as a team member. He just sat in the shade of a tree, far from the other children. I explained the strategy I hoped to implement. The teacher's cooperation was critical to the process. I would walk into her classroom and ask if I could borrow 6 of her children for about an hour. Speaking loud enough for the entire class to hear, I would say that I wanted to do an experiment to see if 5th graders could have a discussion in which only positive things could be said by the children for 1 hour. Mrs. Brown would ask for volunteers to go with me. She would pick the most popular boy in the class, our targeted child, and 4 other children who were valued by their classmates and had good verbal skills. Then I would take my group of volunteers to an empty room to have them sit in a circle. I was a participant in this positive group discussion, just as the students were. I explained to the children that we would start by sharing something good about ourselves or something good that had happened to them recently. I would start by sharing something good that happened to me. I shared that my wife had recently given birth to a baby girl. Turning to my left, I asked the girl sitting next to me what good thing she had to say about herself or what good thing had recently happened to her. It took a bit of coaxing from me before the isolated child shared that his family had just moved to Florida from Indiana. Once every child had shared a good thing, I asked them to share some other good thing about themselves or about something good that had happened to them recently. Again, I had to coach the shy child to say something good about himself. He had gotten a good grade on the test that was returned yesterday. Next, I asked the group to share something good that had happened to them in 4th grade. The shy child struggled with that, but finally shared something positive. This time, I stated, I want you to say something nice about someone in the group. Maybe someone sitting across from you. I called upon the social star of the class to start this part of our experiment. He told the boy sitting directly across from him that he liked what a good batter he was in the softball game they had played at recess. Someone told the shy child that he liked the way the child walked down the hallway with kind of a cool look. That brought a big smile to the isolate's face. He was able to share something he liked about the person sitting opposite him without being coached by me. Next, I asked the group to continue to pay a compliment to someone in the group other than the one he or she had last commented upon. We did this pattern 2 or 3 more times. I told the students that there was just one more task for us to do, and then we would all go back to the classroom. I wanted us all to focus on just one person in the group, and each of us would pay that person a compliment. Each of us would tell that person something we liked about him that we had not said before, or tell that person something nice we have thought about that individual during the session or at some other time. The person that was receiving these positive comments could only say thank you to the one making the positive statement. I had to do a lot of coaching on this one. The social norm was to diminish the comment by saying such things as, "Oh, I was lucky. That's not the way I am at home. I'm not like that, really." The targeted child was clearly pleased to be receiving these compliments and was able to give meaningful comments to the other children as they became the focus of the group's praise. I checked back with the teacher a week later to see what effect the positive group speak had upon the social isolate. She reported that at the first recess after the session, the star of the class leader, was one of the 2 boys designated to pick their team members for the softball game. His very first pick was the shy boy, our target child. The session members made a point of having the shy child eat with them at lunch. This group of children went out of their way to engage the child in their activities. In turn, the child was much more vocal and happy in the classroom and in all of the other settings of the school. The strategy worked. I had used the technique in several different settings. It was a failure with one high school group. The problem was that there were 2 boys who just could not stop being negative. One guy's attempt at positive comments were actually backhanded insults to whomever he was speaking. The second negative participant simply insisted that people were basically not nice. Therefore, you were being a fake to say they were. When I would try to reword their comments into a positive one, the 2 males would team up and argue against my position. 2 hardcore negative personalities in this type of small group setting were more than I could handle. As my career has evolved over the years, I have found this positive group feedback technique to be highly effective in bringing new teachers into the fold of an established group of teachers at the start of the school year. It has also been an effective tool in establishing positive working relationships among professionals. It does not work if there are too many strong negative personalities in the group. I have found that the important feedback time is the last exercise. Having everyone in the group tell you something positive about yourself is a nice experience. You appreciate the comments and the people making them. Plus, you learn some things about yourself. I have often seen the recipients of the group's praise have tears in their eyes. The exercises, before the final one, are a way for the group members to learn positive things about each other so that they will have genuinely positive comments to make that everyone recognizes as true. As I stated in the beginning, there was a lot going on in my life during the second year of my employment and the second year of integration for the Pinellas County school system. Our daughter was born in December. We were experiencing financial pressure due to the hospital bills. Our son had his tonsils removed. I was continuing with the workshops in the school system and at state conferences on the RAID positive reinforcement strategy, leading encounter groups to bring people together, as well as conducting my 150 annual psychoeducational evaluations, responding to teacher requests for classroom management consultations, and dealing with various crises of the moment. In addition, I was asked to co-author a federal grant. The co-author was a social worker operating in the school system. Her part of the grant covered expansion of innovations she had developed for the system. I never met her or saw what she had written. Naturally, my section was on how to expand the strategies I was implementing. I was also responsible for working out the budget for my section. If the grant was funded, I would be the co-director of it. Well, I thought, since it would be more responsibility on my part, I ought to get an increase in pay. I increased my salary by $3,000. The overseeing supervisor explained that I could not do that. The way he explained the policy of the school system to me caused me to believe that no matter what position I ever held in the school system, I could not receive a significant raise. The only raise I could ever receive from the system was the percentage increase in salary awarded everyone working in the system each year. Well, if I correctly understood what he had told me, I would never be financially secure here. I had tried to enter doctoral programs in Florida so that I could work at least part-time in the Pinellas County school system while being a graduate student. For a variety of reasons, none of the programs would admit me. I began to explore my options for graduate school in other states. Late in the spring of 1971, I was accepted into the University of Tennessee's Psychology Department's doctoral school psychology program. We were excited. Anna would have to get a teaching position in or around Knoxville. It would be hard for us. We were committed to doing it. By the end of July, we were living in our house in Knoxville, and Anna had a job at a high school just 3 miles from our home. She was to teach English and French. The first year of graduate school was without financial assistance from the university. However, I did qualify for in-state tuition, as I was a Tennessee homeowner living in my home. I also had the GI Bill's educational benefits coming in every month. Once I was on campus, I learned that I should expect to spend at least 5 years as a graduate student before I would meet all of the psychology department's requirements, despite entering the program with a master's degree. At that time, the UT Psychology Department had a series of hurdles one had to meet in order to receive the PhD degree. Each one was expected to take a year of preparation before it could be mastered. Fortunately, I had learned far more than I realized about psychology at the Army's Special Warfare Center and in working in the schools of St. Petersburg. That boost in knowledge, paired with my accepting as normal, working 12 to 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, 12 months a year, enabled me to receive the doctorate degree in December 1973. I had actually passed my defense of my dissertation in July, but the paperwork was not filed in time to qualify to graduate from the university that summer. I became employed as a director of psychological and special education services for an educational cooperative that July. The cooperative's central offices were just 10 miles from our home. It was the first year that the Tennessee school systems were implementing the state's special education laws.